What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Claudia Bellafato holding it down in the DraftKings studio in Boston. Fun show on deck for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe us, rate us, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, wherever you get the DraftKings network. Catch the best of Gojo and Golic wherever you hear VSiN on the radio from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. Claudia, who do we got coming up on the show today?
Well, we have some awesome guests coming up. Also, just busy Wednesday in general because we already have baseball. Sports started at 6 a.m. today, but ahead on Gojo and Golic, making sense of the madness, Rebecca Lobo and Seth Greenberg are going to join us to talk some hoops. Signed with a sandwich, Mike Williams hungry to join the Jets. And dinner with the Golics. The guys will reveal their Masters Championship dinner menus, which we're all food guys over here, so I'm very excited to hear what you guys have to say for that one, Gojo.
Yeah, it's a very hungry show starting off today based on the menu that you've laid out there so far. We're in a sweet spot of the year, too, because we've got so many sports starting to happen all at once. We have that sports equinox that goes on in the fall where we get basketball and hockey and football and all these things happening at once. We're very close to that same sort of beautiful feeling right now. We will get into why, including one of the funniest statements that I heard from our control room this morning in the midst of all this action, but we also have a lot of March Madness related action going on around here that also involves a little bit of money and a little bit of food. So Claudia, can you get us updated on our 2 show brackets that we've got going on right now after yesterday?
Yeah, so 2 show brackets like Gojo said. If you haven't done it already, head to the DK on Twitter to sign up for both. So the first is actual basketball, the other is food, but Golic's bracket contest is live right now on DraftKings. The winner is going to get $2,000 in bonus bets. Whoever has the most points at the end of it is going to be the winner. So head over to DK on Twitter, find the link to enter, repost it, and fill out your bracket now. That's real hoops. But then we also have Starch Madness. We are crowning a champion of fast food in that bracket on this show. Our full bracket out now. Main voting results. We have been talking about this between us, and then we throw it up on Twitter and let the people debate, which is always, I think, the most fun of it, Gojo.
It absolutely is. We put the full bracket out there. We had a couple of people fill it out, which we greatly appreciate. But your votes on Twitter are what count the most, and we've got the results from yesterday in the first round of main menu item voting, Dad, that we can get to. The double quarter pounder with cheese vanquished the Burger King Whopper. I know it's a sad day for you as the leader of Whopper Nation there. The double quarter pounder won with 55.8% of the vote. The Popeyes chicken sandwich, 61.5% of the vote, beat the 7 seed Arby's beef and cheddar in the first round matchup. We had, and this one brought me great joy. This would be the next one. This one in the 3-6 matchup, the Chick-fil-A spicy chicken sandwich took down the Wendy's Baconator. That's a tough one for those of us that are Wendy's stands and appreciate that. But justice served in my mind, and this might be a pushback on the regional dialects in this menu. The Taco Bell Crunchwrap Supreme as the 4 seed, 53.8%, takes out the In-N-Out Double-Double in the first round. So a tough blow for burgers going up against alternative menu items in the first round of this one, Dad. Any of those surprise you?
Yeah, well, I mean, two of them, the In-N-Out double-double losing was a tough one for me. Even though, as I said the other day, I've started to come around on the Crunch Wrap, the Taco Bell Crunch Wrap. Your mother and I started going to that more. We were in South Bend, and it was really, really good. But I still like the double-double. I'm an In-N-Out guy, so I was a little surprised at that. I also actually... I had a feeling that Popeye's Chicken Sammy was going to beat the Arby's Beef and Cheddar, even though I voted for Arby's Beef and Cheddar. That was a great throwback for me. I'm a big fan of that, as Claudia makes an unbelievably disgusted face.
Oh,
if
so Claudia hates that, she would hate what
I
I had when I went to Arby's for a week. I got lunch for a week every day at Arby's, and I finished off with the Meat Mountain, which is an off-menu item that has meat from every kind of sandwich on their menu, all in one gigantic sandwich, and I didn't walk right for a week. So that one might actually draw that feeling.
It's just beef and cheddar. I feel like, should we just call it like steak and cheese, even if it's not steak? Beef and cheddar just sounds disgusting to me. Also,
beef and cheddar sounds awesome. What are you talking about?
For some reason, I don't like it. And every time I see Arby's commercials, we have the meat. I don't know. I like meat. Like I respect meat, but for some reason, the sound of Arby's just makes me want to gag.
No,
I do like the idea that we've taken steak and cheese and just gone one standard deviation point over, though. Like, no, beef and cheddar.
Yeah.
No, call it steak and cheese. It's not beef and cheddar. You obviously, what a hater. A hater that you are. I voted for Arby's, but I knew Popeyes was going to win. And then while I do like the Burger King Whopper, Mike, as we talked about yesterday, those were two throwbacks against one another there with the double quarter pounder with cheese. That's where I voted. I mean, that's kind of the staple for me. So I'll be interested to see, because as you mentioned, that's the only burger that won. You have a chicken sandwich, a Chick-fil-A, another chicken sandwich, and a Crunch Wrap. Now going up against only one burger as we move on in the main. So that was a good voting day by everybody. I'm glad everybody's jumping in. We get to do it again today.
The double quarter pounder against the Whopper is like the Lakers and Celtics, just peak nostalgia of two of America's biggest brands slugging it out for fast food supremacy. Dad mentioned we've got the next round of voting that's going to start today in the sides category here. You guys helped us in the first Fry 4 to try and get the number one fry group out there. The fries became the 1 seed. We had a bracket of 4 rounds of fries because we couldn't pick. McDonald's fries was the winner there, and so now they become the 1 seed in the sides bracket. We get McDonald's fries going up against Bojangles Dirty Rice. It was a weird submission. I hadn't had much exposure to it, but the people spoke, and so it gets representation. I have a feeling going to receive swift and brutal justice in this matchup against McDonald's fries, which are a wagon. And then McDonald's also featured in the 2 seed here. McDonald's hash browns, the 2 seed, going up against the 7 seed, and I think really lovable underdog Cinderella potential in Culver's cheese curds. People love these cheese curds, and I can understand why, Dad, as someone who I think, despite growing up on the East Coast and despite living in the West Coast now, has a big fat Midwestern heart beating in my chest that is full of things like Culver's, a place so beautiful they decided to butter their buns because that is how you shine God's light on his people. Their cheese curds, the perfect accompaniment to that burger and a beloved menu item for a lot of people. So I'd like to see Culver's get some love in this bracket. I don't know if they're going to find safe harbor against these hash browns.
I don't know if they are either. I'm a big Culver's fan. I when we get to the desserts, one of the Culver desserts is in there. I hope can make a run, but we'll get to that. I think people, just how Claudia has a problem with, beef and cheddar. I think people have kind of also a problem with the name cheese curds, right? It just doesn't sound, like, wow, I got to go get me some cheese curds, though they're incredibly good. I just think the naming of them, to Claudia's point, now I don't understand how you don't like beef and cheddar, but I would imagine you have the same thought process on cheese and curds. Cheese curds. Just
voted, so we're to 61.3% hash browns because they should be 100%. Because really, cheese curds are just wannabe mozzarella sticks. I like mozzarella sticks, but you need like the girth and the length, and the curds don't have that. So, and it also sounds weird. You're right.
I mean, they're just like fun-sized ones. You get a little fun-sized mozzarella stick. What a delightful experience that is.
No, I'll pass. Heavy pass.
You know what I think too, Dad, to your point, people who get turned off by the names of foods here. Last time I checked, we don't eat with our ears. We eat with our mouths. You judge it by one thing and one thing only, and that's the taste.
It's connected.
You could maybe get me with smell, because smell's tied into everything, but I don't know if I can go with what it sounds like here. Maybe plating, if we're on Chopped, and all of a sudden that's a valuable part of the equation that matters when you're being judged, and people seem to forget that.
Yeah. I have never been someone into plating. Just put it on the plate because it's all going to mix up in my gut, so I don't care what it looks like. I will say, and like you said, the research was done on Twitter before this. That's why Bojangles Dirty Rice got in there. I've never had that. I'm not going to lie. I've had, I think, 99% of everything we're going to talk about in this contest, but I've not had Bojangles Dirty Rice, and I think that's going to be this in the first round of all the dishes. This could be the biggest margin of victory with McDonald's fries beating Bojangles Dirty Rice. I think that's what's going to happen.
Will be a bigger margin of victory than the one Virginia basketball was on the wrong side of last night. What the hell was that? Dear God. Oh, wow. That was nasty work, Dad. I know you had a bracket where you picked them to not only get out of this first four, but to then win in the first round of the tournament.
Yeah, I did. So in for those that may not know, I am a multiple bracket person. Now, I have not picked one yet for our tournament for DraftKings. I have not done that yet. I'm waiting a little bit, but I had to turn a few in the other day. I'm probably up to 6 or 7 right now that I have filled out. And in one of them, I not only had Virginia winning this game against Colorado State, of which, what did Virginia have in the first half? 14 points, I think. They ended up with, 42 for the game, lost 67-42. I had them winning in the first round as well. I had them beating Texas in the first round. So these are the kind of shots you take when you're filling out 8, 10, 12 bracket sheets. You throw a dart a little bit.
You've got a couple of brackets that serve as the old infantry, and remember in military where they used to be playing drums in the background, and you just march these people into cannon fire. Yes. These first couple of brackets for you were the guys marching into cannon fire. We got to watch a couple of limbs get blown off up here so that we can come back and regroup with the rest of our cavalry when it comes to the real bracket that, again, at DK Network on Twitter, you can go in and join on the DraftKings Sportsbook there. The truest thing that I saw written yesterday was reposted by the Dan Le Batard Show's Twitter account. It was a shirt at that game that said, Virginia basketball is just Iowa football. And man, does that have to hit home in uncomfortable ways for people on both sides of this. But speaking of sports that are going on right now, Claudia, you mentioned before, we've got baseball happening right now. All of us woke up and kind of got caught off guard as we have two of the better teams in Major League Baseball going at it in Korea.
Well, Twitter was the best part. Baseball nerds knew this was happening, but the people who didn't woke up and probably were like, is this a replay of some game? No, baseball started today at 6 a.m. in South Korea between two of the best teams in the league, between the Dodgers and Padres. This is the first time Major League Baseball will get a new season internationally since the Athletics and Seattle Mariners played 2 games in Tokyo in 2019. So yes, things are officially kicked off. It is Padres up 2-1 in... Where are we? Top of the 7th, I believe.
7th.
Yet, this is interesting because if we're looking at the odds at DK right now, Padres up. You can get them live at plus 170. I do love me some live lines with baseball, but as we know, Dodgers pretty heavy favorite coming into this season overall. So you can grab the Padres now while they're up at plus money. But again, we do have the whole entire season to bet, so don't rush anything now. I know we're all itching though.
And a little breakfast baseball. There's nothing wrong with that right now. I mean, it immediately grabbed everyone. I heard some voice from our control room, and I couldn't see because I'm out here alone. But all I hear is Xander Bogaerts, the first RBI of the season, erupt for the control room. So we're all itching for a little bit of it. So if you feel froggy and want to take the jump on some breakfast baseball, that's your prerogative. Go off. It's your time.
Shohei
It is amazing.
I'll say real quick, Shohei hasn't gone yard yet, but he did shatter the roof with a foul ball, 119 miles per hour.
Yeah, he is 1 for 4 right now officially, as we mentioned, the Dodgers trail 2-1. The Padres are already on their 5th pitcher in this one in the bottom of the 7th, so trying to hang on to that 2-1 lead. But you're right, as I flipped on the TV this morning, I'm like, wait a minute, what is this game going on? And to know you got live sports at the hours of our show is always a beautiful thing.
So good.
Man, shattering the roof. The ceiling is no longer the roof when Shohei Ohtani is armed with that bat.
There's an awesome video, too, on Twitter of his wife, I guess they just got engaged or they got married.
Yeah.
I forget.
No, they got married.
No,
They got married. So his wife's in the stands, and it's a foul ball, but still she gets so excited because he shattered the roof. She's going to be seeing a lot of that, but hopefully in the other direction.
I mean, it's amazing that we're seeing any of her. The fact that now, after all the secrecy, we've seen more of Shohei's wife than we've seen of Kate Middleton in the last month is a pretty telling sign on both sides. So congratulations to everyone. Baseball season is back here. Did anyone see? So last night in the NBA, Anthony Edwards, I guess, is just going to stay doing this. Like the last time we talked to Zach Harper, and we asked what had to happen for the Minnesota Timberwolves in the wake of the Karl Anthony Towns injury, who, if anyone missed it, is still out indefinitely with a knee injury right now. The Timberwolves also didn't have Rudy Gobert last night, and the Wolves were able to keep this close. Anthony Edwards, I think my favorite part about him is we're watching this burgeoning superstar and this guy who's thrown down. They showed a rip in that game last night of his career highlights so far this season. And you had that insane block where he hit his head off the backboard like a week ago, followed by the dunk that we saw last night over John Collins that broke the internet and almost broke Anthony Edwards' hand. And he played through what was, I think, a dislocated finger coming off that dunk. Yeah. My favorite part is I don't think Anthony Edwards scored in the fourth quarter of this game. When I was watching last night, I ended up going to bed in the third quarter. He had 30 points in 3 quarters of last night's game and finishes with 30 points yet again, his 4th straight game with 30 or more. And still with all that, he had been creating for them. He has become an incredible facilitator because of how adept he is at getting past the first defender, forcing double teams, drawing all that attention in the lane. And even with all that, when it came down to the last shot of the game, they're down 3, there's only a handful of seconds left. Yep. There is no question with that team where the ball goes. And I think we've talked about that so much through the lens of teams like the Boston Celtics, where they've got some end game problems they still haven't quite worked out, Dad. You look at Anthony Edwards, and based on the makeup of this player, people love all these Jordan comps, but this guy really does seem to have that belief that no matter what, when an important thing needs to happen, the ball needs to be in his hands. And more often than not, you feel really good about that right now.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Short came up a little short on the shot at the end as he went for no points in the fourth quarter, but you mentioned 30. Listen, we talked about this before. We saw what the 76ers, what happened to them without Joel Embiid. They have just, dropped, 3-4 spots, where Minnesota, without Karl Anthony Towns, and you mentioned Rudy Gobert. I mean, you're missing your 2 big guys. They have stayed right there. Now it's Oklahoma City and Denver, even at the top. Minnesota's 1 behind about 15 or 16 games ago. Those 3 are going to battle it out for 1, 2, and 3. And what's been interesting real quick is New Orleans making a run on the Clippers for that 4th spot. New Orleans 8-2 in their last 10, won 3 in a row. The Clippers lost a couple, and they might get passed by New Orleans. But I've been really impressed, Claudia, with what Minnesota has been able to do without their 2 big guys hanging right near the top of the conference.
Well, that's the key, and that's the point, that they're not fully healthy. And right now I'm looking at the odds at DraftKings. I would jump on this immediately. The Timberwolves are 14-1 to come out of the West. The Nuggets plus 160, Clippers 295, Thunder 850. You have the Suns, then the Mavs, then the Timberwolves. What is going on with this massive gap? Senior, are you hopping on this with me?
I'm telling you, I may be hopping on this one. I like what I'm seeing right now. Let's see, when you get some of their players back. And remember with Anthony Edwards, I believe it was him, Mike, we were talking about, and this is where voters can actually make basketball players more money. If Anthony Edwards makes any of the All-NBA teams, I believe it was him, that his deal bumps up $53 million over the life of the deal. So, I mean, and that's always been weird, and I know we've discussed it with voters actually having that kind of power to give a guy that much extra money. But what he is doing and what the possibility of what this team can do if they can get healthy, to make a run is going to be real interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they've been one of the three that's been right in range of that 1 seed all year long. Like, you look at them, and Dad, you brought up your point. You've got a surging Pelicans team that becomes really interesting in the post. I think this postseason for the NBA, for some of these reasons, has a real big chance to be that boost towards the next step for the NBA, because we're watching the end of LeBron and Steph as the preeminent era in basketball. And so you need a guy like Anthony Edwards to get a bunch of meaningful postseason reps. You need, a guy like Zion, if all of a sudden now, down a little bit of weight, playing better ball, this Pelicans team hanging around, if they can win a series and make a little bit of a run in this postseason, we know how important that is to starting to build the lore around some of these young superstars as the NBA tries to hand the baton and bridge the gap to this next generation. And so when you start to look at that, Claudia, it's absolutely very enticing, but even more enticing is the prospect of, oh man, we get to watch Anthony Edwards do some of what he's done over the last month in the stages where everyone is dialed in and everybody is watching this guy. Coming up next, let's get to a little bit of NFL. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets getting the band back together for one last job.
On Gojo and Golic, where we can all appreciate a good sandwich. And so can't former Chargers wide receiver Mike Williams, because he was going to visit the Jets, and of course all of the fans knew about this. So one of the fans and content creator NYG_Matt decided he was going to send a sandwich to Williams to try and convince him, of course. So we did it on DoorDash, and then he sent it on Twitter at New York Jets saying, Mike Williams' breakfast sandwich is on the way. Let me know when it arrives. And then the New York Jets actually took a picture of the sandwich arriving. It is in the training center. And they tweeted a picture on Twitter saying, got it. So they were playing along with the idea. The Jets then followed up with a video of Williams eating the sandwich. And he said at one point, this is what got the deal done right here. So we all know the show appreciates the power of food, but he actually took it a step further because then he went to the Nets game last night. And I don't know if it was the same bag. I'm assuming it wasn't. He may have gone back to this place to get another sandwich because he was seen on the sidelines with another sandwich bag. So I got to go to this Morristown diner, I guess, in New Jersey because apparently the sandwiches slap. And Senior, I will say this too, to take people behind the scenes. You have a good breakfast sandwich, it looks like every morning that I'm assuming your wife makes you. So you can respect this, right? Like everybody likes a good breakfast sandwich.
Breakfast, best meal of the day, without question. Breakfast for dinner is one of the greatest things of all time. So we are a big breakfast family. We've always been a big breakfast family. And let me tell you, a good breakfast, Sammy, is just absolutely out of this world. So, and it's amazing, you know, like anything else, it's not like they're so different than other breakfast sandwiches, but some just taste better than others. So we had our favorite spots. You know, when we were in Philadelphia and lived in New Jersey, we have our favorite spots everywhere for breakfast. So good on that person for sending that to Mike Williams, and I'm glad Mike Williams enjoyed it.
And I mean, good on the Jets social team for playing along with that. Easy wins right now are something the Jets desperately need because they have been hard to come by both on and off the field, Claudia.
They actually changed their profile picture to a picture of the sandwich with a bite in it. So they're like, not only are they playing along, but they're like diving into it. So yeah.
The Jets are making this sandwich their entire personality now, which again, when you just had to weather a storm of headlines about whether or not your starting quarterback was going to be a vice presidential candidate for a fringe nominee, this is probably what you need to do for your own sanity and the sanity of your fan base here. And Dad, it does sort of underscore this continued process for the Jets this offseason that I think is really interesting around Aaron Rodgers, because we all understand whether it's to leave and go run for public office or just the sands of time catching up, this Aaron Rodgers signing was a good time, not a long time type idea. And so you had to go and capture this now. And we look at what the Jets have done this offseason. Hey, your offensive line was in shambles last year and couldn't really get the job done for you. So what'd they do? You go out and sign 2/5 of the Ravens offensive line in John Simpson and Morgan Moses. And then you add Tyron Smith, the future Hall of Famer, on the left side. Out at wide receiver now, hey, we need some weapons opposite Garrett Wilson. Well, Mike Williams is a really interesting one. And for him and Tyron Smith, Dad, I think this is both why this feels like a last heist job for Aaron Rodgers, because these are guys that are not without their flaws, most of them being physical right now. Tyron Smith and Mike Williams, unfortunately, the biggest knock against them at this point is availability. So, Dad, for this move, what's the ceiling look like here? And do you think this changes the draft plans at all for the Jets? I've seen people mocking them. Daniel Jeremiah in his latest mock has them trading up to go get Marvin Harrison Jr. in the first round. Does this preclude them from doing that?
It may make them look somewhere else because, like you said, you're playing with the Aaron Rodgers era year by year. Now, while we've seen rookie wide receivers have a major impact, they've had holes to fill. They filled on that O-line. But do they go another area? You have Garrett Wilson, obviously. Breece Hall's been fantastic. Breece Hall came back so well from that knee, whether running the ball or catching it out of the backfield. Now you have Mike Williams, and really only his last year was a year he was down, Mike. He played 3 games last year. He never played less than 10 in any of his 6 previous seasons, and that 10 game, I think, was his rookie year. He's usually played 13, 15, 16 games. So outside of last year, he's been durable. He gets, averages a ton of yards a catch. He makes big plays down the field. 29 years old. So this is one of those, you don't have him for 10 years. You got him, to make hay while you have Aaron Rodgers. So is the thought, remember, your defense ranked 3rd last year. Your defense was really good against the pass, struggled a little more against the run. So you're still loading up because it's Aaron Rodgers. You got another year, maybe 2, probably tops, we think, in all this, though. I'm done guessing on older quarterbacks since we kept guessing wrong on how long Tom Brady was going to go. Sure. So I'm not sure. I would say because wide receivers have been giving you stats right away, maybe they still will, but I wouldn't be surprised one bit to see them go a different direction now in the draft.
I'm just not sure where you go at this point that nets you as much help now, because again, that offensive line room got a little bit crowded. If you told me they ended up getting one of the top guys and that changed some of the math, I'd maybe believe you if you had a guy you wanted to kick inside. But I still think that if you're this Jets team, getting Marvin Harrison Jr., getting one of the triplets in this draft, if you've got the opportunity, given how win now you have to be, and given how pro-ready a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. is, knowing like, hey, we have to account for the fact, like for them, they've got to have an important swing guy on the offensive line, because unfortunately, with Tyron Smith's recent history, you've got to account for him missing a couple of games. That's just kind of what you have to build into the model. And I think the same thing is true there. And it'll never hurt you to have two great wide receivers on this team if you do brace for life after Aaron Rodgers and have to invite another quarterback in your doors, to have two of the best young wide receivers in football like we imagine Marvin Harrison Jr. to be. So I still think we could see them go that route in the draft. But Dad, credit to Joe Douglas in this front office. They went out there and they answered the bell so far this offseason. There might not be a marquee signing of the group right now. Like we said, there are flaws that you can see in all of these, but they had clear flaws and clear issues on offense, and they've at least gone out and tried to address them head on.
I agree. And as we said, when you're on a timing issue, it's not like you're building with a young quarterback. You're building with an older quarterback and an injured quarterback now. So you got to get guys that can make hay right now. So that's why I could still see them taking a wide receiver. Mike, I think they go wide receiver or O-line, because while I love Tyron Smith, I love what he's done, I just think you need some extra protection there, just because you're not sure. You're not sure of what's going to happen with him with some of the ailments that he's had. Plus, I don't think you can go wrong building that old line that gave up 64 sacks last year. Now, as we know, Aaron was out. It was Zach Wilson, who can hold the ball a little bit as well. But still, that O-line was a big, big problem. And you got a quarterback, a 40-year-old coming back off an Achilles. You damn well better protect him pretty well. So I could see them solidifying the O-line even more, but wouldn't be shocked if they went wide receiver. But I think that's really the only two positions we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I think the good part with this draft is usually the worry when you've got an older team like this and an older quarterback is, hey, I'd be a little leery about having a young guy protecting this guy, having a young guy out there because of the learning curve. But when you talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. in the pedigree, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, these are all guys that have come from offenses that asked a lot of them. And with this offensive line group, I think when you look at the top guys like Olu Fashanu to a lesser extent there, but even throw in there Talisi Fuaga from Oregon State and a couple of these other guys, a lot of them more pro-ready than I think usual. A lot of times we can get lost in the traits conversation. I think a lot of these offensive linemen and receivers have a chance to come in and make an impact early.
This is going to be kind of the Los Angeles Chargers discussion too, isn't it? On whether they go O-line or wide receivers, since they got rid of all their wide receivers. So what direction do they go there? And knowing Jim Harbaugh, you probably think offensive line over wide receiver. But like I said, I think they're the other team that kind of mirrors the Jets on which one of two directions they're going to go.
Yeah, the difference there is they've got one of the young space alien quarterbacks as opposed to the one on the back nine. Right. I think they can afford to build out a little bit longer timeline. I'm with you. I think they still end up going offensive line. I've seen a lot of people mock receiver. Mina Kimes suggested they could be a trade back candidate. That I agree with. If you can trade back and get one of this quality slabs of beef coming out in the draft, that's a win for you there. But I think the directive for them is clear. You build along the lines of scrimmage and you prosper. Coming up next, speaking of Mike Williams, his alma mater made some news. Clemson joining Florida State and suing the ACC. We'll tell you what it means and why next. You're on Gojo and Golic.
Gojo and Golic. Clemson seems to be making its way out of the ACC, joining Florida in a lawsuit against the ACC to basically avoid the exit fee and maintain TV rights. But Gojo, I know you know everything about this, so I'm going to toss it to you to break it down for us. And really, what does this mean for the rest of college football?
Yeah, and I think, Claudia, that's the more important part to latch onto here, because listening to people that I trust around college football, splitzoneduo.com, phenomenal podcast here, Alex Kirshner and those guys do a great job. And the nature of this lawsuit is sort of ridiculous on its face, where it's Clemson is looking at the ACC. We've all heard the term now in the last few years, grant of rights, where a team signs over its broadcast rights to the conference to negotiate on their behalf, and everyone's all hunky-dory. And we know the ACC's TV deal has not been great. And essentially, Clemson's trying to say, oh, when we signed that, we figured it was you own our grant of rights as long as we're a member of the conference. Yeah. And if we left, you wouldn't own that anymore, which is never really how this has worked, and everyone kind of knows that. But, Dan, I think the larger point here is Clemson's banging pots and pans, like we saw with Florida State coming off this season. And we know both of them had sort of kicked the tires on this before, but after the CFP results at the end of the year when Florida State got left out, they started raising hell, and now Clemson has joined in. And so if you're the ACC, you've got the two biggest brands in your conference now loudly making noise, trying to explore paths to leave here. And if there's anything that we have seen about the rich and powerful in college sports, it is once they want something done, they get something done. And this has got to be a very dangerous, scary time for the rest of the ACC because the clock's officially ticking now.
Yeah, it is. This will be interesting because you're right. Florida State started this saying, hey, basically, we're one of the better teams in the ACC, so we should get more money. Just like this new 14-team playoff is going to go, the better teams are going to get more money. Basically, Florida State was saying, that's us right now. Give us more money. Now, Clemson jumps in. I just love the fact. Now, the exit fee, if you want to leave, it's been negotiated and, by the way, signed by all the schools, is $140 million, which is an incredible amount. And basically, Clemson is saying, I love the interpretation. They're saying, yeah, that only means if, but if we're not part of the conference, we shouldn't have to pay that. Well, what the hell do you think an exit fee is? I mean, that's the beauty of any contract, is any contract that has ever signed, the first thing that's done is it's given to lawyers to find loopholes. I'm going to be real interested if Florida State and Clemson can somehow get out of this, because, $140 million if you want to leave is an unbelievable amount. And Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, is basically like, which I'm sure, is what they're going to say is, hey, you signed it. This is what the deal is, as Clemson and Florida State are trying to get out of that. But as you mentioned, bigger in college football, this is a road that's already started to be traveled. And how will this impact it? Clemson and Florida State obviously want to be out of the ACC. What we're heading toward, is it just the Big Ten and the SEC and everybody else, or eventually no conferences and everybody, all the Division I's just separate from the ACC? But there's no matter what happens, Mike, what we're not going to lose is the power dynamic. That Greg Sankey will think his teams are the best, and he is running the best show in the SEC. And if everybody got together, Greg Sankey would want to be running this whole thing. So it's still going to come down to, okay, whatever system we go to now, who's still the power brokers of that system?
Yeah, I think we've seen college football is just a bunch of haves and have-nots at this point. We're learning more and more with each passing day who believes they're part of each camp, and I don't know. I think I'm just interested to see how long this takes, because remember, the rest of what we've seen in college football for the last few years has been done under cover of darkness. USC and UCLA surprised everyone. Texas and Oklahoma before them surprised everyone with this move, where all of the behind-the-scenes working of this happened without the public largely knowing about it. And now you've got these teams banging these pots and pans very publicly. This is all happening right in front of our eyes. And so that motivation seems to be even stronger, where they're not even going to play coy about it. They're not even going to try and do it the underhanded way. We're going to make loud noise. And you're right, Dad, that it could have two outcomes, right? If you're Clemson and Florida State, you can use this to hold the ACC hostage and give you what you want financially within the terms of a deal that's aged pretty poorly for that entire conference, and say, well, we'll just take more on our plate because these are the the two big brands of that conference. They are the ones that, because they were never able to lure Notre Dame in as a full-time member, are going to dictate the terms to everybody else as they're sitting on uneasy footing. Like, we just watched a power conference die this last year. We saw sad sign-offs from the Pac-12 network. We saw everything. So it's not like this is some foreign reality or alternate timeline. This is here and now. And the ACC, I'd imagine its other members have to be very worried about this reality of becoming the next carcass that gets poached by everybody once these two teams find their way out, which is why, like with the CFP negotiation that just happened, where now the Big Ten and the SEC are going to get more than everybody else in these payouts, I'd imagine if it comes to this, there's a ton of leverage at the table for Florida State and Clemson for the rest of this conference, whose now sole job is to survive. And that's what we've seen for so many teams and so many schools across college football. You can walk in and probably demand what you want if this keeps going down this path.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they sat there and watched, did Clemson and Florida State in the ACC, Texas leave, Oklahoma leave, USC leave, UCLA leave, and then, as you mentioned, a conference get imploded, and everybody was able to do it. And they're sitting there going, wait a minute, why? If we want to move around, why can't we? We got this $140 million price tag if we want to go, which you signed, by the way. So I will be interested to see what's enforceable and what's not enforceable, but it certainly seemed that other teams moved very, very easily, and Clemson and Florida State are just looking around going, why can't we do what they're doing?
I mean, you can for the right price. This is essentially the cost of two Jimbo Fisher buyouts. So if you've got enough oil money, all things are possible through, black gold who strengthens you. But in the meantime, Dad, I think one of the other headlines that popped up yesterday that is kind of indicative of where we are in college football, because this Clemson and Florida State one, I look at it based on everything that's happened and I go, all right, this is just when. It's not if, it's when they figure this out, when they figure out something new to go on here. The other side of it's been the player movement side, and we've talked about it getting more and more extreme right now. The headline popped up the other day on The Athletic that Caden Proctor, the former Alabama offensive tackle, who had transferred back to his home state of Iowa to go and play for the Hawkeyes after Nick Saban retired, might now be leaving Iowa after presumably going through winter workouts to go back to Alabama at this point in time. And on the surface, Dad, it's certainly not surprising given what Alabama can offer, even in a new regime, versus what you think Iowa can offer at this point in time. But the whiplash going on here for Hawkeye fans, and I think just in general what we've seen around college football, this even seems extremes by some of the standards that we've seen here. I was a little stunned by this. I will always defend players' rights to movement, but I do look at this and kind of wonder what's prompting this and what you learned about a school that you grew up around and were originally committed to in Iowa, and then a school you played at in Alabama that you didn't already know before.
Yeah, that's a key point you just said. He originally committed to Iowa and then went to Bama, and this is a monster. He is a huge player. Struggled some. He was a true freshman playing left tackle. I mean, nothing like getting put at one of the most important positions as a true. And he had his struggles at times, but still, the immense talent is there. So, yeah, this is surprising to go through winter workouts. I'd be real interested at what happened, because we have seen offensive linemen develop very nicely at Iowa, without question. We've seen tight ends develop well there, offensive linemen develop well there. So I'm not sure what went on there, but he has the right to move, and he may move. And this probably, I'm sure, will not be I'm sure it's not the first or the last time that we're going to see something like this happen.
And you're going to hear people bring up, is this a red flag? Is this something that people should be concerned about? And what you're going to see is what you just reminded everyone, Dad. Talent trumps everything. This is a very good player at a premium position in college football. And so as long as he still looks like, hey, he can be a future top 10 NFL draft pick, everyone is going to be banging down their door, doing whatever they can to make sure they get it. Whether or not that exposes more in the system that needs help and needs some changes, probably the case. We probably need a little bit of this reined in. But in the meantime, might is always going to make right, and that's once again been the case here. So college football doing its thing, which is basically trying to upend all of the usual power structures that we've seen going here. We mentioned it. We had college basketball, though, start to tip off yesterday with the first 4 games, a.k.a. the first round. So coming up next, we are going to talk to ESPN's Seth Greenberg and take a look at the rest of the tournament field, who needs to be ready and on upset alert as we march into March next. All right, welcome back to Gojo and Golic. We got March Madness firing up and getting ready to go. One of the best weekends of the year, and so we get to bring in one of the best voices around the sport to help us break it down. Seth Greenberg, kind enough to join us now. He's a part of ESPN's College Game Day, covered by State Farm. They're going to be live in studio covering all the storylines and matchups from the first 2 weeks of March Madness. They start this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, from 11 a.m. to noon Eastern on ESPN. Coach, good morning. How you doing?
What's going on, guys? Great to see you guys. I'm a little bit envious of your quality of life compared to my quality of life because we could probably get like a blizzard tomorrow. Who knows?
Yeah.
At
those
the very
days
least,
of thinking
you're
winter
shut
is
inside
over.
watching basketball during that blizzard right now, so it gives you something to do even in the midst of that. But there is no doubt we're winning in the weather department out here. But we're winning right now having basketball back. Coach, I'm curious, as we go into this weekend, we get started with the best tournament in sports. What's your favorite part about this event is every year? What sticks out to you the most?
To me, it's the unpredictability of the first round. After the first round, things kind of level off. But, look, there's so much, especially this year. Think about this season. We've had more unranked teams beat ranked teams. We saw the conference championships, and we saw number ones go down. Bam, 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 bam. Well, you know what? That's going to be a microcosm of what the first round of the NCAA tournament is going to be. There's such a level playing field, and there are more good teams because, let's face it, the low majors basically stole players from the best Division II players. The mid-majors stole players from the low majors. The high majors pilfered, obviously, the mid-majors. You've got COVID year, which is obviously real, and the transfer portal and NIL. It's basically taken a lot of the good players around the country and spread them out. You've got older, more mature teams that expect to win. So the first weekend of the tournament, starting with Thursday, is going to absolutely be insane. And it started last night a little bit. You had a Wagner team with only 7 players. They beat a Howard team. Then you had Virginia. They scored 14 points in the first half.
Yeah.
14 points in the first half. Are you kidding me? But then again, they had 4 games where they didn't get to 50. So that was like a precursor. I thought maybe they would reboot in the NCAA tournament. I know nothing.
As Mike pointed out earlier, Virginia's basketball offense is like Iowa's football offense, where there's a whole lot of nothing going on there. So, Seth, I still have about 10 sheets to fill out before Thursday. So you just mentioned a little bit of parity there. How deep are we? How far do we go with possible teams that could win this whole thing?
Yeah, I still think there's 6 to 8 teams that can win the whole thing. Look, there's some teams that have separated themselves. There's some teams that you think are in good shape. Like, look, UConn has separated themselves. That's just the way it is. The consistency of what they've done, how they've done it, how they've played. I call them whack-a-mole. Like, one guy doesn't play well, and whoop, another guy steps up and makes a play. I mean, it's just the way it is. Purdue, if Braden Smith is healthy. Houston, Roberts is a concern. I mean, they're going to be a player. North Carolina, I know they had a hiccup in the ACC tournament. Kentucky is obviously the big variable. Auburn, their backcourt's not great, but they play like 10 guys. Illinois doesn't have a point guard, but they were terrific in the Big Ten tournament. So you've got teams that are intriguing. So I think we've got about 8 teams if things shake out. Arizona is really talented. Sometimes they forget to defend. So I think we've got about 8 teams that can win it all, but I think we've got a lot of teams in the first round that can pull off some semblance of an upset.
Who do you look at as that double-digit seed that's got the best chance not only to pull off that first-round upset, but who's actually capable of making one of these runs that we've seen year after year in the tournament?
Yeah, the runs are kind of hard, but the upsets, a couple teams, New Mexico, and they're kind of a pick that everyone likes. Why do you like New Mexico? New Mexico, they're the legacy team. They got Baby Mashburn and Baby House and Baby Patino. And Toppin is not Baby Toppin, but he's really, really good. And Donovan Dent is terrific. They're a great offensive team. They rebound the ball. They don't turn it over. They play fast. They can score. They'd be interesting. If they get by Baylor, get by Clemson, I should say, Baylor could be in trouble because Baylor doesn't defend the way they have in the past. And New Mexico's a really good offensive team. UAB, Andy Kennedy, what a job he's done. That was one of the bid stealers. But they're really athletic. They play really hard. They're not a great defensive team, but they have a style of play that they can impose that maybe just maybe they can win a game. So I think those two on that side. I think the biggest thing is, you talk about the Midwest region. Well, Kansas is not Kansas. Let's face it, guys. Let's be honest. You saw what happened in Cincinnati in the Big 12 tournament. McCullers ruled out yesterday. Dickinson, if he moves and Mikey, you probably know better. I mean, dislocated shoulder. If you move your arm in the wrong way, what happens? Could get ugly.
Yep.
Out, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I would think out. So now they're without McCullough and they're without Dickinson. All right, that could blow up the bottom half of that bracket to an extent. My other team is not a double, but Texas A&M is intriguing to me. You need veterans. You need to be up to have good guard play. Wade Taylor, dynamic. Boots Radford, dynamic. They rebound the crap out of the ball. They lead the country offensive rebounding percentage. So I think they're a team. And then the last one I would say is Oregon. Oregon and Folly Dante back. They run through the Pac-12. They're good enough. Dana Altman has never lost a first-round NCAA tournament game.
Oh. Okay. I like that info.
Wait a minute. The bracket of integrity is out. We're talking about, I know I'm going to see Oregon in one of your brackets, Mike.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Like, listen, Seth, I love talking to you, but understand we're purely using you for information to fill out my bracket. I'm completely using you. So on that note, for decades, I've heard you guys talk about, veteran backcourt, and how important that is. So who are the teams that have that so I can start checking them off?
Yeah, Texas A&M has a veteran backcourt. I mean, when you talk about a veteran, they're a really veteran backcourt, and they're tough and they're physical and they're mature, and they've got a substance with them. I think St. Mary's is an interesting one. They got Aiden Mahaney. He's only a sophomore, but he played a ton of minutes. And then they got Marshall Lewis, who just plays so hard, it's ridiculous. Nevada, veteran backcourt. You're talking about Flyers. Jared Lucas is a big-time shot maker. He's kind of mini Steve Alford, but he's playing for Steve Alford. And they got this kid Blackshear, who's 6'4", physical, tough, can make plays. Those are guys, in terms of Flyers. And now, in terms of a player, all right, Tucker DeVries at Drake. All right, he's mini Dougie McDermott. He's playing for his dad as well. His dad was an assistant coach to Greg McDermott. And that Drake team, they got a legitimate post guy in Brody, again, older. And then they've got, he's a matchup problem. Tucker DeVries is a matchup problem. You could put him anywhere on the court. So I think Drake's another one. The problem is they would have Iowa State, and Iowa State, basically, they just play violently. I mean, they might as well be playing they play every single play like it's first and goal, and they're going to do what's that button thing they do where it's like bam, bam, bam. It's Iowa State and Houston, anything out of the Big 12 basically, but Baylor, it's violent. There's a chance someone could get knocked out.
I like Iowa State as the premier tush-push team of the NCAA men's tournament.
Push, there you go.
That is speaking our love language, Seth. It's why you're one of the best.
I went right to your wheelhouse right there.
You did.
Exactly. You know what we need, and that's why we love having you around here. At Seth on Hoops is where you can follow him on Twitter. Again, going to be part of College Game Day's great coverage of March Madness on ESPN all weekend long. Seth, you're the best. We appreciate the time. Enjoy this weekend, my friend.
Miss you guys. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks, Seth.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
we
it.
miss you, brother. And Dad, I, like
Love
you,
Seth.
was furiously scribbling down notes all while Seth was talking here to make sure my bracket looked good and looks.
Yes.
Did you just get handed your breakfast? Is that what's going on here?
I did, yes. By the way, it's a breakfast sandwich. Yes, it is. Just like Mike Williams got handed a breakfast sandwich, I just got handed a breakfast sandwich as well. It's a beautiful thing.
There you go. Congratulations to the New York Jets. You have now, because of sandwich law, officially signed a 61-year-old defensive tackle who weighs about 230 pounds. All right, welcome back. Hour number 2, Gojo and Golic here. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Claudia Bellafato, and our March Madness coverage rolls along. We had Seth Greenberg stop by to get us right for the men's bracket in the last hour here. And now we're pumped to be joined by Rebecca Lobo, former UConn great, ESPN basketball analyst, going to get us all caught up on everything for the women's bracket. But first, a congratulations in order here, as I know we were talking off air. Our alma mater, my alma mater, I should say, in high school, Northwest Catholic in Connecticut, recently led to a women's state basketball championship by none other than Rebecca Lobo's daughter. So congratulations. I'm sure Proud Mother is probably the best title at this point over all the other ones that you've had so far.
Without question, and I know your parents have gone through this, but man, it is hard watching your kid play. Like there was a week between the semifinals and the championship game. That whole week, I didn't realize it till after. I was a stress ball. I had an upset stomach, all the stuff that I never had as a player. And then to watch them, in the second year in a row win their state title was incredible, especially for her. She's not playing anywhere in college. This is the last time she's ever going to play basketball, and she goes out on a win. So it was really cool for us to watch.
It is 2 times, like you said, back to back. And isn't it something though? I mean, when all of a sudden you don't have control of what you're doing on the court or on the field, watching your kid, the nerves, it is so, people always ask, is it, what's more difficult? It's not even a question, right? Watching your kid is way harder.
It's way harder. And I tell you what, I am not the most pleasant version of myself when I'm watching either. Like people want to come over and say, hey, and my husband, Steve, he's like, listen, if you want to get coffee and catch up, we can do that. I don't want to talk to you right now. I'm watching my kid play and I'm a wreck.
I'm curious for you, Rebecca, because I know for me and my dad in high school, every once in a while, there'd be a little bit of headbutting because dad wanted to watch all the tape with me. He was doing the fatherly thing and offering advice at a sport that he had played at an incredibly high level. I don't know for you and your daughter how that relationship was. Did you get in there and try and offer much help? Was she receptive to that?
I offered and she was not receptive. Like she'd get on huddle and she'd like, are you going to be watching your opponent yet? Do you want me to watch with you? Nope. I never watched any film with her. She had no interest in that. After games, I would feel it out a little bit. Like, you really good defensive game or this, that. And we'd be on the ride home and it eventually get to the point, earbuds went in. She was done. She wanted no part of me as her coach, which was fine. But she did want me as her mom. So that was good.
It is definitely a tough line where they say just be the parent, not the coach. But man, I'm not going to lie, it's hard. And I know Mike and Jake went through it a little bit when we watched tape after their football games. Maybe they'll probably back off on that on their kids. We'll have to wait and see. But congrats to your daughter. Congrats to Northwest Catholic. That is an awesome back-to-back title and a great way for her to end her career. As we start talking about, and we mentioned this before, Rebecca, the women's tournament has way more juice than the men's tournament of what's going on, of name recognition, of top teams, of top players. So as we look at this and start trying to set our brackets up, we have to start with South Carolina. I'm sure disappointed last year, undefeated, get knocked off by Iowa in the Final Four, and here they are undefeated again. Is there a big step between them and the next team, or are teams right there to try and take it from them?
Probably before the SEC tournament, I would have said, yeah, there's a big gap between South Carolina and everybody else because they had beaten everybody and they looked like world beaters. But then in this SEC semifinal game against Tennessee, they have a 23-point lead in the second quarter. Tennessee's able to come back, and it looked like they were going to win that game before the incredible shot banked in by Camila Cardoso, the center, the 3-point shot to help South Carolina win that game. So certainly South Carolina is the favorite. They're the team that I think if they go in and play absolutely to the best of their ability, that other teams can't beat them. But at the same time, we got a lot of really, really good teams in the tournament. You never know what can happen. So it's not like some other undefeated teams who've gone in and we're like, they're definitely running the table. But absolutely, without question, South Carolina is the favorite.
What is it about Dawn Staley's squad that has made them such an unstoppable force for most of the season in the lead up to this? I think we're always used to South Carolina being very big, very physically imposing, but what else have they added this year that's really had them so hot?
Well, the thing that's so crazy about them, so I did their first game. They played against Notre Dame over in Paris, the first game of the season. It's a South Carolina team, guys, that lost their 5 starters from a year ago all to the WNBA draft. It was a whole new crop. I think most people going into this season thought, South Carolina's going to take their lumps this year. And then they haven't. They have a different players playing different roles. And what's been most interesting is it's a different style. Not only is it even faster up and down, a faster pace than they played last year, and they're still great defensively. They're still great rebounding the ball. What they didn't have last year is they were not a good three-point shooting team. And it's the reason they lost to Iowa in the semifinal. Iowa defensively just dared them to shoot. South Carolina shot and missed. And that's not the case this year. They're one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country. And one of the pieces to that is they got Tahina Pau as a transfer from Oregon. She's one of the best three-point shooters percentage-wise in the country. She has been a really great leader for them. They have the ridiculous freshman Mylasia Fulwiley, who comes off the bench and just pushes pace and is such an exciting player. So the thing that's really interesting is they're playing a different style, not only different players, but a different style. And you have to give Dawn Staley so much credit for adapting kind of the way she plays to the personnel that she has this year.
Something that we're not used to seeing is UConn not being a 1 or 2 seed, your alma mater, and just what Gino RM has done. They're sitting there at a 3 seed. And I'm wondering, we all know what, obviously, and you were part of what Gino has done and the aura around Gino and just that program. Do players today still, when they look at UConn, feel that way, or have they lost just a hair of that luster from current players today? Not those of us that have watched them for years and seen them win, but from the players today.
I think they still have the respect that they've kind of earned. I mean, they didn't make the Final Four last year, but it was the first time in 15 years that they didn't go to a Final Four. They went 14 consecutive years. And but I think certainly this year they're flying under the radar. The story is South Carolina or Angel Reese and LSU, or certainly Caitlin Clark and Iowa. UConn, we're not used to them not being not only the main story, but not in the top 3. That being said, Mike, I think they have a really good chance to go to the Final Four this year. Their 1 seed in their region is USC, which is led by Juju Watkins, and is a really, really good and talented team. Their 2 seed is Ohio State, who actually knocked UConn out of the tournament a year ago in the Sweet 16. But UConn has been playing really, really well. Their 5 losses this year all came to teams that are ranked either have a 1, 2, or 3 seed in this tournament. It was a tough schedule. So I think I kind of like their bracket for them, and I think they have a really good chance to come out of it. But back to your question, certainly there's other stories this year, and there's other teams, and there's great players kind of spread around the country a little bit more, and that's a really good thing for UConn, for women's basketball in general, because you can remember a number of years when we're going into the first weekend of the tournament, UConn's undefeated, and we'd always have a knucklehead somewhere saying, is UConn bad for women's basketball? You're like, really? You're going to come out of the woodwork the first weekend of the tournament after they just beat in the 16 seed and ask a question like that? So ultimately, UConn has been great for women's basketball. Now women's basketball is elevated, and we've got all these other great stories too. But don't sleep on them though this year. Don't sleep on them, because I really do think they're in a bracket that they can come out of, or at least a region that they can come out of.
Yeah, you talk about all the star names that proliferate the sport now, largely in response to what UConn was for so many years. It's fascinating. Like, Paige Beckers was supposed to be that next biggest name in the sport that's ended up becoming Caitlin Clark for a lot of now, but Paige Beckers still leading this UConn team in scoring, still a great player, and a name that people will absolutely, I'm sure, see and hear well throughout March if they make the kind of run that you've talked about them being capable of. Let's mention Caitlin Clark. We've gone this far into the segment without mentioning maybe the biggest name that's been in the sport so far this season, which, I don't know, has to kind of be a breath of fresh air in some regard, because like you said, Rebecca, there are so many compelling names. But for Caitlin Clark and this Iowa team, were you surprised, like some others, at the difficult road that they drew in this tournament? Their region right now, especially 1 through 4 in the seeding, is an absolute juggernaut.
Yes, I was. Yes, I was. That was the first thing I noticed when we saw the bracket. It's funny because we get to have a conversation with the selection committee after we get the bracket before we go on air. And that was my question. I said, did you guys consider that maybe TV would rather have Iowa and LSU meet not until the Final Four? And they said, no, we didn't consider that. And to me, it is the toughest bracket. Their 2 seed is UCLA, and this is a UCLA team that's super talented, certainly has the pieces not only to get to a Final Four, but to win a national championship. And then you have LSU, and we had the epic national championship game last year, all the stuff with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. So you don't want any of those matchups to happen prior to the Final Four, but I guess that's what it is when you have talent spread across women's basketball like we have now. But I'm really fortunate in that I get to call the Albany region, and so this is how I'm looking at it. We might get an Iowa or LSU UCLA Sweet 16 game, and then potentially an Iowa LSU Elite 8 game, and then still have this incredible Final Four in Cleveland this year. But yeah, to me, Iowa was the number 2 overall 1 seed. So they had the second best, and to me, they got the toughest region. And I don't know how it all came together that way. It's a little bit unfortunate because I think a lot of people would have liked to see some of these matchups not happen until the Final Four.
How do you define Caitlin Clark's career?
She's a singular force in terms of people's paying attention to women's college basketball. She's a singular force like I've never seen. We have never had a player drive attention like this. A player who sells tickets not only at home but on the road, and a player who draws eyeballs in terms of TV viewership. We've never seen anyone like Caitlin Clark before, and part of that reason is because we haven't seen someone quite play like her before in terms of the logo threes that she takes, how many of them she takes, and the high efficiency she has when she does. I love her as a passer as well. Of course, the deep threes are fun to watch, but man, she's one of the most entertaining passers we've seen in a long time too. So we haven't seen anyone like her. It's funny. Junior brought up Paige Beckers. Their freshman year, there was a debate in women's basketball. Who's the best freshman? Is it Paige Beckers? Is it Caitlin Clark? Paige Beckers was the national player of the year as a freshman, then has some injuries. And then Caitlin Clark does what she's done, in particular, the last 2 seasons. And one of the things that's so impressive is, everything that anybody on the outside would see as, look at all the pressure on Caitlin Clark. She's going after these records. Look at the pressure. Look at the pressure. She's like, yeah, pressure what? She's 8 points shy of Kelsey Prum's scoring record, and she goes out and gets it in the first 2 minutes and drains and gets the record on a logo bomb. The kid is unfazed. The bigger the moment, she just meets it. And I think where a lot of other players or people would be like, man, this is a lot. She's like, bring it on, does it with a smile, loves playing, loves performing, and just haven't seen anybody quite like this.
And I think you talked about UConn sort of lit this signal for the rest of the sport, and we've seen the response there. And I think for Paige Beckers in terms of Caitlin Clark and the showmanship and bringing that to college basketball, we've seen that also responded to very quickly. I mean, you look around the sport at Madison Booker at Texas, Juju Watkins at USC. We mentioned Elijah Fulwiley at South Carolina, Hannah Hidalgo at our alma mater. Like, where does this freshman class, Rebecca, rank all time in terms of the talent that we've seen come in and immediately become name brands in the sport?
It really is incredible. I just love that you can fire all these freshmen off just like that. Yeah. You're speaking women's basketball language, and I love it. It's incredible. We've got this freshman class, and especially because Caitlin Clark has declared that she's leaving for the WNBA draft. It's like women's basketball, of course, it's going to take a little bit of a hit losing her to the pros, but we've got this next crop of incredible players. And I give a lot of the credit to the WNBA, entering its 28th season. I think like these kids have not known a life where there wasn't a pro league for them to watch play. This thing has existed since these guys were born. And so they've seen basketball played at the highest level. They've gotten a lot more opportunity to see college basketball played at a really high level. And they're working and aspiring to do that and now getting there. But I mean, Hannah Hidalgo is incredible. I don't think a lot of people outside of the Notre Dame community knew what to expect from that young woman. And then again, that first game of the year against South Carolina in Paris, I was there to call it. And I'm like, who is Hannah Hidalgo? Holy cow, this kid can really play. Madison Booker down at Texas, you bring her up. She's the Big 12 Player of the Year, and she's averaging over 20 points a game and just doing incredible things for them. And of course, Juju Watkins is a force. And a lot of these players now are coming into, I mean, LeBron's been tweeting about Juju for a number of years, coming into the sport with a little bit of attention on them and then proving how good they are. And it's just been super fun to watch.
Well, it's great because, again, it's definitely worth repeating. I mean, Texas, a 1 seed, USC, a 1 seed, Notre Dame, a 2 seed. These aren't players on bad teams. These are players on good teams. And we talked to Neil Ivey last week, the head coach at Notre Dame, and she saw this in Hannah, though you never know what's going to happen when someone goes to college. But now they get a chance to play on the international level in some of these games that they play, and she saw her ability to handle the big moment, and it certainly carried over as with those other freshmen as well. It's been very, very cool to watch, and it seems the women's game is in great hands going forward. That being said, as God knows, we always love talking to you, but as I said to Seth Greenberg, we also use you for information. So as I'm trying to fill out my bracket sheet, where am I looking for those potential upsets? Because the women's bracket can be a little more chalk than the men's bracket, but where am I looking to possibly pick up those points by picking an upset?
Yeah, well, and a little more chalk, a lot more chalk. Like the women's game will still be, I think, chalk in the early rounds in particular. I wouldn't bet against Iowa, but a potential Sweet 16 matchup, Iowa with Kansas State, they played already twice this year. Kansas State not only beat them, but beat them in Iowa City. And then after that, Iowa was able to beat Kansas State in a neutral game, but that could be a tough one. And then if it ends up not being Kansas State against Iowa, if it's Colorado, well, Colorado is a team that met Iowa last year in the Sweet 16, and that was a dogfight. Iowa obviously came out with the win, but there's some games there that could be tough. Your Notre Dame team could have a tough matchup potentially in the second round. Ole Miss is really good, and they can be a monster defensively. I would still pick Notre Dame to be victorious in that one, but especially because Kylie Watson is out with injury. Notre Dame played 6 in the ACC championship game. The road gets a little tougher. I wouldn't bet against them. That could be, though, a tough second round matchup. Some of the other ones I mentioned, I think UConn has a good chance to come out of that region. And if they meet Ohio State in the Sweet 16, that's, again, Ohio State forced UConn last year in the Sweet 16 to over 20 turnovers. UConn had a ton of trouble with the press, but UConn didn't have Paige Beckers and they didn't have the guard play they have now. So, as a 3 seed, not a big upset if they beat the 2 seed, but some of the earlier ones, you're pretty safe usually if you're going chalk in your bracket.
Rebecca, I know you said you're calling games here, so forgive me if you can't. Did you pick a Final Four and a national champion? Are you able to do that while calling the games?
No, I try to stay away from that because it's amazing how personally coaches take it if you don't pick their team. It's not personal. It's not personal. But, I would be surprised if South Carolina did not advance out of the Albany 1 region. I think a lot of people would. I think Albany 2, that one's going to be the toughest. Iowa, LSU, or UCLA, none of those would surprise me. If I had to pick out of the Portland 3, I do think that UConn could come out of there, but Ohio State or USC wouldn't shock me there. And Texas as a 1 seed, I would probably, if I had to, pick them to come out of Portland 4. They are one tough defensive team. Vic Schaefer gets his teams ready. But in terms of matchups, we'll see. But I think the committee did do a really good job in terms of who they seeded as their 1 seeds and their potential for making it to the Final Four.
Well, Rebecca, we were teammates so long at ESPN, and I had to pay off so many bets when UConn beat Notre Dame. I should have made the bet this year if Notre Dame beat UConn, and I didn't. I'm sorry, I didn't. I know. I could have finally got one back on you, but we always appreciate your time. It's always great talking to you. I hope the filters are good in the house as well. We get them changed, and hopefully we'll talk to you during the tournament as well.
Please have me back on. We miss just having you in the vicinity in Connecticut. And yes, April. Our filters are changed in April.
There we go.
Nice.
My father's legacy secured is making sure Rebecca Lobo and her family have clean air to breathe. Thank you, Rebecca. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Back here on Gojo and Golic, where I'm going to take you through some of the great markets that DraftKings has. This is an unbiased opinion. I really think that DraftKings has the best markets when it comes to betting the draft. We're specifically going to talk about the total quarterbacks selected in the first round. This is something you can bet on. The line set at 4.5. It is favored, pretty heavy favorite to the over. So 5 or more expected to go in the first round, which is no surprise because it's a deep, talented class. But as we know, not every quarterback, even taken out of that top 5, is going to be necessarily successful. An NFL researcher tweeted this out saying from 2021 to 2022, there were 19 quarterbacks selected in the NFL draft. Only 2 of those 19 are expected to start in week 1. Trevor Lawrence, of course, the first pick in 2021, and then Mr. Irrelevant and Brock Purdy, the last pick in 2022. So this just then led to a hot take. Here we see from Bucky Brooks saying the NFL has a quarterback evaluation and development problem. There's no other way to spin it. And you can go on to read the rest of this pretty lengthy quote, but I think the top of it is really what speaks out. Senior, let's go to you first. Do you think there's a quarterback evaluation problem?
Listen, the miss rate has been 50% for a while. This isn't something new. This has been going on for a while now. Quarterbacks get over-evaluated. Teams think, I got to grab this guy or somebody else is. That's why you'll see high picks, but then you'll see teams jump into the back of the first round to grab a quarterback. Because remember, in the first round, you get that option year, so you get that X year to hold them. If they go after that, it's a 4-year deal. So I don't know, Mike, if this is anything new. I know the way quarterbacks are used is changed. It used to be, no matter how you quarterbacked in college, when you came to the NFL, you learned the NFL way to be a quarterback. Now, teams are smarter in saying, okay, we're going to take your skill set that you had in college and we're going to incorporate it to the NFL and let you continue to use your skill set, even though we've seen some headbutting of that, a Matt Canada, Kenny Pickett, a Luke Getsy, Justin Fields, and we've seen it over the years a little bit. But as far as evaluation, Mike, this has been a 50% hit rate for a while. This to me is nothing new. And I said early on, we're going to get 5 quarterbacks in this draft in the first round because that's what teams do. They overvalue them.
They do. I do want to push back on the overall sentiment because there are a lot of good young quarterbacks in the league right now. They might not all be perfect, but you look at Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray, Tua, Herbert, Hurts, Love, Purdy, CJ Stroud. All the guys I just mentioned are under 28 years old. So I think we've got a fair influx of young talent around the league here. But if you want to get into this, Dad, I think the simplest solution to this and what Bucky's talking about is as long as you have a draft system that rewards bad franchises, you're going to have mismanaged prospects. Like the worst teams, which usually, forget just performing on the field, I always tell people, look up. It's usually the worst ownership groups, front offices that are incompetent, organizational ineptitude across the board that are handed the keys to the best players in our draft. We've talked all about a lot, I think, as a sports media group about how unfair it is to the prospects for this to go. But in a league that wants parity, they've got to try and help out the worst teams in the league. But that also means you're handing an incompetent group a great player who needs help still. And I think that's the one thing we've established more and more is every quarterback, no matter how talented they are, aren't just going to be able to come in and singularly bootstrap your entire organization. And so I think it's a system that's always going to put these guys in harm's way.
Completely agree. And it always is about where do you go and how is that team? And it's not just the quarterback position, it's other positions, as well. One of the guys mentioned all the time is a great wide receiver, an Al Toon, who ended up going to the Jets and didn't do a whole lot of what the expectation was because you saw his ability. And if he'd have gone, the thought was if he'd have gone to a better team, how that would have helped. Now multiply that by 100 with a quarterback because now the franchise rests on your shoulders. And that's why I keep stressing CJ Stroud was an exception, not the rule on what they did in Houston. You normally are going to go through some growing pains. How can you go through those growing pains and come out on the other side without having to give up on that quarterback? That's up to the organization that while your rookie quarterback is on his rookie deal, what you build around that player.
Yeah, I think what Bucky brought up about development, though, is interesting when you think about this position. I saw Bomani Jones mention kind of offhand that, hey, maybe quarterbacks were never supposed to be throwing the ball this much. Like there is a lot more on these guys' plates in a league that's become much more of a passing league that requires even more of them. And Dad, for the development of this position, there's one guy that plays. There's one guy that plays at any given time. And so for other positions, if you've got a young player, even a first rounder who might not be fully ready for all the reps, what do you do at wide receiver, offensive line, defensive back? You get them reps on special teams. You get them supplemental reps in there where they don't have to go out and be the day in, day out starter. Because of the way other positions are structured, you can get guys reps and help develop them, even when they're first round talent, if they're expected to have a lot on their plate early on. Quarterback, it's like, man, if we spend a first round draft pick on you, we're trying to get use out of that contract right now and get you out on the field. If we've paid you high price money in free agency, hey, you're going out there and you're getting a lion's share of the reps. There's not a lot of places to develop these young guys outside of, hey, you're either getting game reps and it's sink or swim pretty early on, or you're not getting hardly any reps at all. And how are you supposed to get better behind the scenes when that's the case? Even for the guys that we've seen, the rare instances like a Mahomes or like a Jordan Love, where you're in a position where because they've got someone who's already a good veteran player for you, or in the Packers case, a Hall of Famer, where you actually do get to sit and do a little bit of learning.
Well, throw Aaron Rodgers into that, throw Tom Brady into that, who didn't start right away. Aaron didn't start right away. And because I've always been one of those that said, put a guy in right away and let him get his nose bloodied and his eyes watered. But we are seeing the benefits of guys waiting. What I'd like to know, and I don't know it off the top of my head, because I'm, with all the stats that are out there, I'm sure you could find it quicker than I could. We talk about quarterbacks throwing more in the NFL now, and so having to be, learn more of the passing games. But I would bet, and I don't know for a fact, that throwing has become shorter in the NFL. They're not asking these quarterbacks to hoist it downfield. We're in an era of hitches, bubble screens, swing passes, short passes, i.e. look at San Francisco, who keeps leading the league in yards after the catch. So while quarterbacks are throwing more, are they more dangerous passes than we've seen in the past with the more pocket passers who are rifling that ball, 10, 15, 20 yards and more down the field? Or are we in an era, we're throwing more, but they're shorter passes and easier completions?
So there is some of that built into the offense, but I think it's also you're just having more attempts in general. And it's that old, I don't always subscribe to that old axiom of, hey, when you throw the ball, there's three outcomes that can happen and two of them are bad that coaches usually use to be able to go back and play more conservatively here. But you are opening yourself up to more risk every time that you do drop back. To that point, Dad, Warren Sharp tweeted this in February of last year, so I don't know what the 2023 stats were in this, but looking at the average NFL quarterback target depth by year from 2011 to 2022, it dropped by almost a yard. The average depth of target for a player in 2011 was 8.7 yards. That was down to 7.7 yards in 2022. So, we've seen the Shanahan-McVay offenses that major in that stuff certainly change that, and maybe a league now that's watching a little bit of a rushing renaissance in those offense afford some of these quarterbacks help will be something that offers them a lifeline. You look at Bobby Slowick and CJ Stroud and an offense that had him under center a bunch, had him running a bunch of under center play action early on in his career, might help set a foundation for these guys, but then it's still, the development problem is that the math has always been bad for quarterbacks compared to other positions, and more is expected of you earlier on because of the dollar amount and because of the nature of the position.
So basically, how do we wrap this whole thing up, gang, is 5 quarterbacks are going to go in the first round, and if you're a fan of one of those teams, cross your fingers because history says 2, if not 3 of those quarterbacks is going to bust out. And then you're going to be starting all over again at the quarterback position.
Yep, because we sit here and say after the college football season, hey, we probably got 2 great quarterbacks, and then the rest we'll see. And now we're seeing mock drafts with 5 going in the top 12 because this league's thirst for this position is unlike anything that we've ever seen. Speaking of thirst and hunger, coming up next, let's get back to food brackets and John Rahm's Masters Dinner next on Gojo and Golic. We will get to John Rahm's Masters meal plan in just a minute here and our own spin on that, but it is Side Piece Appreciation Day here at Gojo and Golic. Our Starch Madness bracket rolls along. We did the mains yesterday, and we've had side voting open up today in the first round of our Starch Madness bracket that you can check out at Gojo and Golic on Twitter and help vote there. The 3 seed versus the 6 seed, Sonic Tater Tots versus the Corn Dog Cookout on the board right now. The Sonic Tater Tots off to a roaring start, but only a couple hundred votes in there. And what should be an absolute dogfight here, the 4-5 matchup, Popeyes Biscuits versus KFC Mashed Taters and Gravy right now. The Popeyes Biscuits narrowly edging them out. We had earlier voting today as well. The McDonald's Fries up against the 8th seed Bojangles Dirty Rice, absolutely mollywhopping them right now. 92% of the vote going to the McDonald's Fries. And Dad, the 2 seed Hash Browns versus Culver's Cheese Curds right now. McDonald's Hash Browns, 61% of the vote. So adding a little bit more to the fray at Gojo and Golic is where you can vote. I'm rooting hard for the Corn Dog Cookout. The idea that a corn dog could be a side in general is incredible.
Corn dogs are amazing.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I'm not surprised about the McDonald's fries and the hash browns. You know, McDonald's fries could set a record for margin of victory in this one. But these last couple, I'm not going to lie, I don't know of Cookout, right? I don't know of it. So, and this is one thing that goes on is people don't eat at all of these places. I certainly have had the Sonic Tater Tots. But these two are two that I'm not as up on, where the Popeyes biscuit against KFC mashed potatoes and gravy. I voted KFC. I love their mashed potatoes and gravy. I absolutely love it, but I love the biscuit as well. This one showing already is going to be, I think, the closest battle. I look forward to seeing, which seed 4 or 5 jumps forward here.
Senior, I have the same struggle. I haven't had the corn dog from there, but I don't care. I know what a corn dog tastes like, and that has my vote.
By the way, we need a class field trip. I know we've got to take Jesse to Taco Bell still, but I need to take you and Dad to Cookout because God in heaven, you would love it. It is just it's standard fast food fare, but somehow feels a little bit greasier and a little bit better. I think it is some of that Southern love that goes into each and every bite. The milkshakes, which we will visit with when we get to the dessert section here, should not be outshined by the rest of what you can get on that menu. And I want to say this, it's what I always have the same conversation around In-N-Out Burger. In-N-Out Burger is very good, but I think the press for it and the hype around it is a little bit much and ends up making it a little bit overrated relative to the rest of the field. It feels forbidden. There's a long line, so everyone gets up on that. I kind of feel the same way about tater tots. They're very good. But almost always I would take French fries over tater tots in most every setting. And I surely think here I wouldn't. I voted for the corn dog. I'll fully admit it. I love tater tots, but at times I think we vault them into conversations that they shouldn't be in.
Tater tots are wannabe hash browns, just like cheese curds are wannabe mozzarella sticks, and I stand firmly by that.
Yeah.
By that logic, I feel like I'm a bit of a hypocrite here because I love cheese curds, but for some reason, tater tots, maybe it's because tots have a better agent. Like cheese curds don't get talked about enough, so they feel underrated versus tater tots get all the press. They get all the hype. They're like Brussels sprouts agent. They've done a great job of publicly branding them so that people enjoy them, Dad.
Yeah, I'm a fan of tater tots. I mean, you just pop those bad boys in. I love them. I'm a big fan. And like I said before, the name cheese curds, I think just initially, if you haven't tried it, can turn people off by the name alone.
Tater tot's a good word, though. So.
All right, well, you guys have a chance to weigh in on that at Gojo and Golic on Twitter to have your voice heard and have democracy reign true here as our Starch Madness bracket rolls along. Mains yesterday, sides today. More to come in the coming days here. But while we're very hungry, Claudia, we've got so close. You're starting to see the commercials. The Masters, a tradition unlike any other. And John Rahm participating in one of our favorite traditions inside the Russian nesting doll of traditions at Augusta is the Masters Champions dinner that he has gotten to roll out here for his buddies.
Yeah, and usually with these menus, they try to, give respect back to their roots. So he's Spanish, so Spanish heritage-inspired menu. And this is a quote from him. He says, basically, I put all of my favorites and even included a dish from my grandma. He called my grandma for the recipe. If somebody doesn't like it, please just don't tell me. Don't tell anyone, actually. It means a little bit too much for me to hear it. Which I totally understand, guys. That's so cool, though, that they got the actual recipe from Grandma. You gotta love it. And I'm not gonna try and pronounce any of these because I will disrespect the Spanish heritage.
I'm telling you, same thing. I'm looking at him going, I can't pronounce it. And I think this is one of the cooler things in sports. For those that may not know, if you win the Masters, the next year at the Masters dinner during the week of the Masters where champions come back, you make the entire menu. I think it is a very, very cool thing. And John Rahm, I think, did what most would do. You pick your favorites. You pick maybe what you liked as a kid, what you like as an adult. In this case, what his grandmother made. I love this tradition. I think it's very cool.
So while I'm not going to go and say I'm the same as Claudia, I'm not going to try and pronounce a ton of these. My Spanish, despite having taken it since the second grade, really lags behind here. Duo is so many. You guys ever do Duolingo, that language app? I've done that a couple of times. That little owl is so judgmental and tries to make you feel so bad if you miss a couple of days. He sends you push notifications. He sends you emails. He's constantly checking in and trying to shame you back into it. And let me be clear, shame can be a powerful tool in this, and it often works to try and preserve the streaks that you have on this thing. But that is a judgmental little owl.
I had to delete it for that reason. The pressure was on. I was like, this is...
He's a bully. Duo's a bully.
Yeah.
He is.
Listen, the only thing I can read on this is for the dessert, puff pastry cake, custard, and chantilly cream. That's it. I can't read anything else.
I was going to say...
And that's cool because I'm a dessert guy.
I was probably going to say, for those who can't see the menu, it's Mama Rahm's classic lentil stew. I believe that is the recipe that he was referring to. I'm not going to try. But you have pastry cake for dessert, and there's a lot of good stuff on there.
They have acorn-fed Iberian ham here. I didn't know you feed the pigs acorns because it makes their bodies do different stuff and it makes the meat different. I didn't know piggies liked acorn. I learned something new today. Dad, our crew asked us to build out our Masters menu. I want to get to yours at the very least here. What did you build out for yours? We'll go starters, main, sides, and dessert.
Yeah, my appetizer is a seafood tower. That way, there's just a little bit of all kinds of seafood. Monster tower, love a seafood tower. My main is going to be beef Wellington. And for those that may not eat meat, there's going to be a fish choice for you as well. A very nice fish choice of whatever you would like. And my sides, I don't do vegetables, like the good vegetables. So I'm going to go mac and cheese, biscuits, and au gratin potatoes. All nice, cheesy, and fatty. I love all that.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then for dessert, I'm going the hot fudge sundae ice cream station to where you go create your own. Create your own, baby. Create your own.
Yum.
Go forth and prosper. Love that one. Love a good beef welly, but potatoes au gratin, really underrated in the starch community since we're talking about that so much around these times. I appreciate that you went highbrow, Dad. I went more of the, I believe it was 2019 Clemson National Championship White House visit. Or no, it had to be, I think, 2020, somewhere in that range. It was that different White House administration's White House dinner full of fast food in honor of Starch Madness. Right. Boy, I butchered the joke. Let's go to the dinner menu here for me. Appetizer, I went Chick-fil-A nuggets. Main, I went Crunchwrap Supreme. Side, I went Arby's curly fries. And dessert, I went the Cookout milkshake that we were talking about here. So I tried to use only things that would have been present in our Starch Madness bracket.
The opposite menu.
I like you. Good theme. Good theme going along there. A shake, I would have gone Portillo's. My favorite shake is the cake shake from Portillo's, but I'm certainly willing to try things.
Yeah, the Chick-fil-A nuggets, one that didn't make our bracket, got left on the cutting room floor, but still a deserving entrant in this one here. At Gojo Golic on Twitter, whose dinner would you rather eat as you head to the Masters celebration here? I'd probably, after reading all this, still side with John Rahm's, even though I don't know half the items. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories. Send you into the rest of your day on a high note here. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. Watch us live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Listen to the best of Gojo and Golic from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. And if you have to miss it at any of those spots or our great guests, thank you to ESPN's Seth Greenberg and Rebecca Lobo, who stopped by to help us break down the men's and women's brackets in March Madness this year. You can hear that wherever you hear your podcast or available right here when we get done on the YouTube channel. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third. And let's start with this. Jim Harbaugh had a yard sale, which is the most Jim Harbaugh sentence humanly possible, as he's getting ready to leave Ann Arbor. He's currently, I think, living in an RV outside of the Chargers facility or what have you. But we got a picture from the yard sale yesterday. And Dad, I know you love a good yard. I think we all love a good yard sale.
Yes.
No matter what. You see the sign around your neighborhood, and you're always curious and tempted to go and see what other trinkets someone might have. And let me tell you what. You stumbled onto the Harbaugh yard sale, Dad. You're going to be able to get you a snow globe. That one thing is for damn sure.
I am loving this, kind of the table that has the catch-all on there, a sewing machine. What is there, 17 snow globes? And is that a lava lamp I see on the table?
Yes.
I was going to say that.
That's our era. I mean, again, Harbaugh and I were in college at the same time, NFL at the same time, so I saw that lava lamp. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. But I love that kind of the catch-all table there of different things on. But how cool, you go to a Jim Harbaugh yard sale. How cool would that be?
You could probably get him to sign something and then like auction it off and just say this is Jim
there you
Harbaugh's,
go.
Right? Like take the lava lamp, have him sign it.
I wonder if Jim was there, because I know there's stuff going on obviously before the draft. I don't know if he was there because, Dad, you guys had an estate sale before you moved from our house in Connecticut, and you kind of hung around there to do the whole Mike Golic thing, see if it could drive up the price a little bit on some of this stuff.
Well, that's one of those things where your mother didn't want to be around there because we lived in that house for, you guys grew up in that house. And, she got kind of emotional. We were leaving it and selling things in the house. So she didn't want to be around during it. And I'm like, I'll be there. I'll help carry things to the car. I said, we're obviously putting up things for sale that we don't want anymore. So I didn't really have that emotional attachment to them. To me, home is where the family is and everything. So I was cool with moving everything. You need help to the car? Yeah, here you go. Extra $5, let's go. So I kind of enjoyed watching the process of how it worked. And during the sale, the sale of our stuff, we actually sold the house. Someone came in and wanted to buy the couch, ended up buying the house. So it worked out pretty well. I was there to do a little negotiating.
There you go. See, you can wheel and deal at these things. It's not just the knickknacks that are for sale here. No. You can buy the entire house if you play your cards right at one of these. So a Jim Harbaugh-led garage sale, absolutely a place that I would like to find myself one day. Because he's also a guy, too, I probably rejects most modernities. And so you're going to find some good, weird, old stuff mixed in there. From something old to something new, Claudia, let's get to that. Netflix deciding to go for their next iteration of football-led content here, moving away from quarterbacks, giving us some wideouts.
Yeah, so this is going to be debuting this summer, and this is what sort of made everybody fall in love with Kirk Cousins, and then people realize Mahomes' wife really isn't that bad. She seems like a normal person, so we'll see what they have to say after this one, where we get Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, they threw a tight end in there, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and this is by NFL Films, Omaha Productions, and 2 p.m. Productions. So I think it's going to be pretty good. It's always nice to sort of see what goes on behind the scenes with these guys, and then it makes you want to watch them a little bit more during the regular season, right, Senior?
Oh, listen, quarterbacks, it's cool, but quarterbacks I think are going to be more reserved. They're not going to be out there as much. They're kind of supposed to be the stable leaders of their team. Wide receivers are divas, man. I'm looking forward to this, to seeing where this goes. And I know there's a tight end in there, but George Kittle, he's a personality. So I'm looking forward to this. You'll get a little more raucous, a little more off the wall, I think, than you would with the quarterback. So I'm definitely looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it helps, helmet sport, being able to take the helmet off and introduce more of the audience to the personalities of your players is obviously great for the league. They saw the benefit of that with quarterback and guys we largely already knew. This is, to Dad's point, a position group as we start to see, because now everyone's like, all right, what's the next position group here? And while I'm supposed to advocate for offensive line, we understand it would just be a lot of very sensible footwear, comfortable clothes, and guys grilling and sweating very publicly. I don't know how sexy that would be for the audience. To me, defensive back is the one, because you want to talk about the final boss of a position with a ton of moxie and a ton of personality. It's defensive back, where you would probably get some guys to say some pretty off-the-wall stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been this way, and I think it always will. When you hear, smack talk, it's the further away from the ball you are, the more talk you're going to get. That's wide receivers and DBs. They are the talkers. They are the showmen of the field. So I agree with you, Mike. O-linemen, it would be a lot of khakis and button-downs, and T-shirts and flannels. Defensive linemen could be interesting. I think that could be an interesting one. But I would agree. Wide receivers and DBs, I think, will be the ones where you're going to maybe have your eyebrows raised a little more than some of the other positions.
Yeah, I think D linemen, if you could get like Myles Garrett, J.J. Watt, Nick Bosa, and a couple of those other guys in that same range here. Honestly, I pick Quinnen Williams, put a camera on that dude. That's what I need. We don't need defensive line. We need defensive tackle. And I just want to watch Quinnen Williams go and operate through life because he seems so full of joy and wonderful. Him, Chris Jones, Jeffrey Simmons, all those guys. We can do this. At Gojo Golic on Twitter, what position group do you want to see on a Netflix series more than the rest? But again, we get receiver. It's going to be great. They got so many of the league's best all in this group, and I think that's also huge. Like, you're getting participation from guys that are at the absolute height of their craft. Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, you mentioned Kittle. It's going to be awesome. Claudia, let's get to the third here. Beverage sizing, always a very controversial topic, and Duncan deciding to wade into new waters.
Yeah, it's Short King Spring. You guys didn't know that? Well, Dunkin' Donuts is making it known on social media. They're saying on their app now, instead of ordering a small iced coffee, it's going to be a Short King. Plain and simple. It is a small iced coffee, but it has a new name. Gojo, why do people do this?
I don't know, because I go through this battle all the time. Like, I've gotten indoctrinated enough to where I don't bat an eye when you walk into Starbucks and you've got to order by their tall, venti, grande, all the different words. Like, you get used to. Yeah. It's just one of those things.
Small.
Like, why do we have to do this? What's the point? Like, I get some of the numbers correlate here, and this is a cute thing, but also, who orders just a small coffee when they go out?
Boom.
Like, yes. I don't know if you're running on Dunkin' here. I'm usually running on basically as close as I can get to a gallon of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. So true.
I'm a little surprised at this as well, that you're pushing a small product. I mean, normally you want to market to sell, get more money out of people, and that's to sell the medium, or forget that, the large or the extra large,
The tall
and get the big drink out. So I'm a little surprised at this. The Short King, they're trying to do the catchy name type thing. Okay, I get it, but man, I don't understand all the marketing money going into a small drink. That I'm a little surprised by that.
That's good.
The drink that wants you to know that 5'9" is a perfectly normal height, and there's nothing wrong with that. The drink that definitely lies about being 6 foot on dating apps, and then shows up and leads to that conversation here. So yeah, listen, and we're not here to height shame our Short Kings. I have plenty of Short Kings in my life that I love. Wonderful, wonderful men of great taste and great courage and variety. But I don't know about that. Claudia, where are you at on that? You're at home base right now. You're the one out in Boston. Have we seen what the local reception has been to the Short King?
I will say people drink iced coffee all year round, but I never see people with Short King coffee. So I agree with Senior. I'm sure people don't care, though. There's a lot of Short Kings in Southie, though, so I will say that. So maybe that's where it came from, now that I'm thinking about it. Because I was going to say, you guys can't really relate because you're not Short Kings, but there's a lot of Short Kings in Southie. That's a thing. I'm just saying.
I wonder if the Short Kings will rise up and support the Short King. If you are a Short King, are you required to now go out and support the cause? Because they did. Duncan may have just checkmated some of the shorter men of America here. Hopefully we can checkmate you into downloading, subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast, no matter what height you are. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.